Next up, after a drop in the polls, Hillary Clinton now sounding a lot more like Donald Trump.
Well, we're going to have to do something extremely tough over there, okay?
Like what?
Over there, like knock the hell out of them.
In the Middle East, we have to smash ISIS's strongholds with an accelerated coalition air campaign.
The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting.
So I am absolutely in favor of and have long been an advocate for tough vetting, for making sure that we don't let people into this country.
Trump campaign senior advisor Boris Epshteyn with me now. Nice to see you, Boris.
Good to see you.
Mrs. Clinton has been tough in the war on terror. Do you think there's been a change?
I don't think she's been tough in the war on terror at all.
In terms of her rhetoric?
You have to look at her record, right? She became Secretary of State in 2009. She was there till 2013. ISIS was truly born on her watch. Some people will point to the fact that it was born out of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Sure, but it was a failing entity by the time Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State. Now it's in over 20 countries all over the world. So her rhetoric maybe matters, but really the key is her record, and she doesn't have a good one on that.
I'm referring to her campaign rhetoric. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you see a change in her rhetoric where she seems to be more hawkish about ISIS and the fight in terror?
You know, as far as the rhetoric goes, I think she goes wherever the political wind blows. While Donald Trump has been consistent, she was just calling for a 550% increase in Syrian refugees just, a few months ago. I don't know if she's in favor of it now. We assume she still is. She hasn't said otherwise. So her rhetoric, just like on the TPP and other issues, is all about where the political winds are. She's seeing it in the polls that the political winds are not with her.
Let's stay on the Syrian refugee crisis and the migrant crisis in general. How do you see Hillary Clinton squaring the fear that ISIS is embedding their terrorists in the refugee flow? We know we've seen that happening in Europe with the idea that she is going to crack down on terrorism. She can't
square it. There's absolutely no way to explain that issue, because if you look at what happened in Nice, Brussels, Paris, on and on, ISIS has said themselves that they're using these migrants as a Trojan horse, and we all know what happened there, right? So Hillary Clinton does not have an explanation for how she's going to equate increasing the amount of refugees, increasing the inflow of immigrants from countries that export terrorism to this country, and keeping Americans protected.
Hillary Clinton is still reluctant to use the term Islamic radical terrorists. I think she used radical jihadis. Do you feel like she's, tougher on the deplorables who are, as she's criticized Trump's backers? Do you feel like she's tougher on them?
Of course. She's tougher on people like me, like my family, people who I work with every day at the Trump campaign. Our supporters all over this country, the 14 million came out in the primaries, and now the tens and tens of millions who are supporting Donald Trump. So she's much tougher on good, everyday Americans than she is on the murderers who commit radical Islamic terrorism.
It sort of is a soft bigotry of low expectations of the Muslim people to stand up and say, you know what, this is unacceptable, right? In terms of how she's treating and not using, and the president also not using the term Islamic terrorists,
I think
right?
the point was made earlier about if you didn't call Nazis what it was, if you didn't call the Holocaust what it was, you wouldn't be able to explain it. You wouldn't be able to fight it and prevent it. So why are we not calling this what it is, radical Islamic jihadism, terrorism, and going after and fighting these people instead of inviting them into our country?
I want your reaction to this. Some say the New York, New Jersey bombing is proof that PC police are getting in the way. Listen to this.
The fact that we can't even look at somebody's heritage or religious background, in this case a Muslim that is a Muslim extremist, a radical Islamist, that's what we need to look for. To exclude that information from investigators, to not be able to look in that direction is a mistake, and it's something that we've gone so far in political correctness to stay away from the term profiling that we're not able to do a regular investigation.
So what this expert is referring to, Boris, and I think you've talked about it too, how the FBI had to go through basically what's inside the FBI being called a purge of its training materials to remove any reference that could be perceived as derogatory of the Muslim faith. Go ahead.
It's absolutely terrible. And if you look at the Fifth, the Sixth Amendments to the Constitution, there's nothing in there that prevents the FBI from using everything in their toolbox, from going after these people and finding out whether there's a conspiracy to commit terrorism. And there are so many opportunities to do this. In this case, we now know about his travel, some of his postings, some of his writings. The same thing happened with the San Bernardino attackers. That woman shouldn't have been allowed back in the United States. We should have been following their postings when they're talking about radical Islamic jihadism and how they wanted to commit jihad. Those attacks could have been prevented, the same in Orlando. But the BC police, and unfortunately, led by the Democrats, is getting their way, and we're not being able to protect our people. That will not be the case under Donald Trump when he's president.
All right, Trump advisor Boris Epshteyn, thank you for your time.